Welcome to this episode of the Smart Leaders Sell podcast. I'm Jessica Lorimer, sales coach and leadership expert, and I am really excited to dig down into today's episode. Okay, how exciting is this? We're back. It's time to just lean into May and get a little bit excited about the fact that we're almost halfway through the year. I was just talking to a couple of clients of mine about this, and we were saying that we couldn't believe how quickly this year has actually gone. So if you are thinking, oh my goodness, how are we in May? Don't worry, you are not alone. We're all there. We are all there. But today I wanted to talk to you about something that has been bugging me for a while, and it's all of the BS sales strategies out there, because I've noticed over the last, maybe 5-6 months, that there are some people out there who are preaching sales strategies that are either just absolute dog fodder. I really wanted to use a different word there. Really wanted to use a different phrase. Absolutely rubbish, absolute tosh, if you want to go very, very posh British. And people are really buying into it, and it's quite frustrating because actually it's stopping them selling things that would be inevitably more useful and easier to sell. So I just want to run through a few of those today. Now, today I am joined by a special guest, and I say that like there's somebody here, but there isn't a person here. I'm actually dog sitting for a couple of friends of ours, and I'm dog sitting their amazing, super fluffy, absolutely huge German Shepherd. I've not brought Max with me because I thought he might eat the other dog. Not the other way around. The other dog's completely softy. But you may or may not hear barking and think, oh my goodness, Max, your voice is broken. But it's not Max. It is not him at all. So just in case we are joined by our extra special guest, if not, he's just kind of sat here on the sofa, chilling out. He looks very unconcerned and frankly uninterested to be on the podcast, which I'm not really sure what that says about it. So let's dive in and talk about some of these sales strategies that maybe you shouldn't employ at all, or if you do, you should use sparingly, and when the best time is to get them going. So this all came about because I went to an event last year, and it was a paid for event. I paid to be there. But something that really frustrated me was that the host of the event kept saying to everybody, they give them the same advice. So they get all these people, on the stage, and they'd be talking about how they want to move their business model forward. And, in the online space, but particularly when it comes to personal development or self-development industries, people often say that they want to make money, but they also want to make an impact, right? And it's one of the things that I even have in a tagline somewhere: impact and income. They're not mutually exclusive. So when people talk about impact, it can be difficult because sometimes what we don't always realize about business is that we have to focus on income first. Income helps you create impact. If you're making a ton of money, it's much easier to go out there and give lots of things for free. And it's much easier to focus on lower ticket sales and helping the masses, which you might not be able to do in the beginning full time because it doesn't pay the bills. And ultimately, as we're always saying on the podcast, we have to help ourselves so that we can help others, not we have to help others first, all for free, and hope that in the end, something will, repay us and our bank manager will be happy. Because that's not how it works, y'all. So anyway, we're at this event and people are talking about the impact they want to make. And the frustrating bit came when, the person hosting was just giving the same advice to everybody, blanket advice. And it was like, oh yeah, well, if you want a business that works, then you need to write a book. And I'm like, oh, okay. I've written a book, so, okay. We'll talk about that later. And then they were like, and you need to get a podcast. I've got a podcast too. And again, we'll talk about that later. And then they were like, and then you need to, host an event. And I'm thinking, oh God, I've hosted events and, that's a lot of work. What they weren't saying, and this was the interesting thing for me. So, after we've talked about these people, they want to make impact in the world. They want to help people. Yes, they also want to make money, but it's like, okay, I feel like we're going after the hard things. Books, that takes a lot. Like, you have to market research, you have to, actually put a process together that's interesting for a reader, that's actually going to get them a result. You have to think about marketing the book, you have to think about actually writing the book. And that's kind of, writing the book, I would say, is the easy bit. The rest of it is the hard stuff. And, podcasting, it's it's not the easiest content medium either. And there are reasons that I chose to write a book and use a podcast as sources of lead generation and sales later on in my business. And that is because they are higher barrier to entry. And frankly, they were just quicker wins. But anyway, this is the business model. You have to get a book and you have to get a podcast and you have to hold an event. And for me, it became more and more frustrating because I was watching all these people getting really excited about recording a podcast or, writing the book, and then B, like swinging to, oh my God, that's a lot of work. Like I'm going to have to do a lot of work to make that happen. And, what if, do I just not make sales before I start writing the book? And then what if my book takes me 7 or 8 months to write? And, it was hard. It was a hard watch. And we all know that I've got a very big mouth. So I didn't, exactly sit quietly for long. And I did have the same conversation there that I'm having with you today around there's no one magic bullet for your business, but there are some sales strategies that you really should avoid until the right time in your business, and that you should do with a lot of thought and a lot of care, because they're not always going to lead to what you need right now. So let's be clear, we're talking about this from a perspective of, if your immediate goal right now is to increase your cash flow, here are the things that you should be avoiding. Okay. If your goal is not to increase your cash flow, if it's, to increase your cash flow, but your primary goal is visibility or branding or other things, these things can be useful and valid. But if your primary position right now is, I need to make money, then, and that's my core focus, these are the things that will not help you and that you should steer clear from. Okay, so number one, we've touched on it, books, writing a book before you do anything else. And this is a hard one because, like I say, I've written a book and I actually really enjoyed writing the book. The writing of the book was the best bit. If you haven't yet had a look at the book, you can actually go on Amazon and it's on Kindle Unlimited. You can check it out over there. If you pay for a Kindle Unlimited subscription, Smart Leaders Sell, you can check it out on there. And if you've already bought the book, thank you very much. I appreciate that. But writing a book was something that happened to me 3 years into business. So I decided to wait on writing a book for a few reasons. One was that for me, when I looked at the royalties on Amazon pays me approximately 25 pence a book. Now, that's not actually the true figure, but seriously, it really is that low. The royalty fees on books when you self-publish are not huge. And even if you go through a traditional publishing route, the royalty fees aren't that big there either. And nor are the advances these days, unless of course you're the next J.K. Rowling, in which case, please write another Harry Potter syndicate and I will be so happy. And the advance will be huge. But writing a book is one of those things that isn't going to make you money straight away. And so when business owners talk about impact and income, and they say they want to make a lot of impact and that's why they're choosing to write a book first off, it always makes me smile in a fairly sad way, because ultimately a book isn't necessarily going to make a ton of impact or get into a ton of arms unless you have either a traditional publisher who's prepared to do tons of marketing, or a pre-existing audience that can help you push it. So if you're self-publishing, that can help you push it into the number one spot on Amazon and therefore get more readers through that search later on. Now, obviously there are different ways of doing it. So, I'm not saying one is better than the other. And I'm not saying that you're not going to get readers if you write a book and it's the first thing you do. What I'm saying is it's not going to be the primary source of your cash flow. So if right now you are focusing on, I need money to pay bills, rent, actually invest in my business, all that kind of stuff, then a book is not necessarily the first thing you want to employ as being your sales strategy. Now, over the years, we've seen people who've used their books as part of funnels and things like that to great success. So, there are absolutely times out there when writing a book is going to help you make even more of an impact in the world. It's going to help you get in front of people and impact their lives and help them change things that they might not otherwise change for a fraction of the cost. But it's not and shouldn't be the first sales strategy that you employ, purely because it does require an audience or immediate access to an audience to begin with. And because the royalty fees, like I say, very low. Unless, caveat, you are an amazing fiction author who really loves wizardry. So that's the book thing. And in all honesty, and I was saying this to a client of mine the other week, one of the things that I find is that my book does really well as a lead generation tool. And we get lots of people who buy the book every month. And when Amazon completes the payouts, I'm actually always quite surprised by how much we get. Again, very much appreciate anyone purchasing the book or who has already purchased the book. But the reality is the majority of people who actually buy the book end up either completely disappearing, and never hear from them again, assuming those people didn't enjoy it, or coming into my community in some way and being sold into other products or services. Okay. The book itself does not make tons of money. We do get some nice emails about it. We've had some nice reviews on Amazon and things like that from people who've said that it's helped them change the way that they view sales and helped, them formulate different sales conversations and things, but it's not a massive money maker. Okay. Then we have, this is a hard one too. I couldn't really find a subtitle for this, but then we have randomly posting influencer type content and expecting all the cash when you don't have an audience yet. So this is the second thing on my list of pet peeves or sales strategies that won't work and will cost you an awful lot of time and money in the process. That is definitely what I should have called this episode. So this one is a funny one because in this day and age, everyone is an influencer. And in fact, it was really interesting to me. I watched the Zuckerberg keynote recently when he was talking about how he is going to take Facebook and Instagram forward. And one of the things that's really interesting was that this big focus that they have on privacy moving forward. And I thought that was great. As somebody who is a relatively private person, I was quite happy that there would be this greater focus on my privacy and things moving forward into 2020. The interesting thing for me was that there almost seemed to be a slight, not campaign, that's a strong word, but a slight theme of we're going to reduce the micro influencer crowd, because they announced that they were going to start trialing the reduction of likes or not being able to see likes anymore on Instagram posts. Now, I find that really interesting because inherently when you run a social network that relies on algorithms, obviously the more likes people get, the more their content is seen. And so for me, this is interesting, particularly with Instagram, because it's such a visual platform, because we look at what other people like, but also with the rise of micro influencers or the rise of micro influencers. Some people have made entire careers off of getting a lot of likes on Instagram. And now we're saying that we might remove those likes. I mean, what will that do? Like, how will those people continue to prove to the firms that they're advertising for that their adverts are working and that they're getting followers or that they're getting purchases through them? It's going to be an interesting time. Yes, I'm aware about clickable links and all that kind of good stuff, but it's a really, really interesting time for social media and to see what some of these social networks are doing and what they're prioritizing moving forward. And if you haven't watched the keynote yet, I really would recommend it. It was actually pretty good. So what we've seen a rise of, and this is over the last, I would say 3 years, to be fair, is people posting like they're influencers already before they actually are. Now, I wouldn't consider myself an influencer. One, I don't post enough content about myself because nothing really happens to me. Not really sure how I feel about that. But I wouldn't consider myself an influencer, certainly on a social media scale. I post content, people like it. I think one of my Instagram posts once had like 125 likes and I was just over the moon. But I'm not the person that you're going to see who, fig leaves approach to model their latest bikini on Instagram so that they can get a ton more sales from it. That's not really me. I'm also not the kind of millennial that is going to advertise the Kylie Jenner lip palette and she's going to get a ton more sales just because I wear insert color here. Just an FYI, never actually tried the Kylie Jenner range. I'm not sure what it's like, and I think it's for people who are slightly younger than me. But if you have any particular thoughts on shades that could look good on somebody who's basically translucent and has red hair, then let me know, because I'm looking out for a good lipstick. So we've seen this rise of influencers or people trying to be influencers. And I think this is really interesting, and it's more of a societal concept than a sales strategy, but it's kind of melded over the years into both. And so what we've seen is that a lot of people who became successful through some of the more organic social media strategies, so people who were posting 3 to 5 times a day back when that worked, and people who were adding tons of people to their personal friends list and posting regular, air quotes, valuable content and doing that kind of thing, they did become influencers in their own right. A lot of them ended up with vast communities. They ended up with lots of followers, and a lot of them still have those followers. It was an incredible wave for social media. It's just a new way of it being used, and those people fully deserve that success. But now what we're seeing is a rise in people who are just kind of like, oh, well, I'm just going to do that. I'm just going to start there. I'm just going to post what I'm eating for breakfast today and expect that that's going to help me make money. And it's not really, unless you're super, super interesting, which, again, I'm just going to throw out there. I'm an average human being. I don't think anyone wants to see pictures of my Cheerios. Unless you're super, super interesting and you have clear calls to action on every single post, it's highly, highly unlikely that just posting about your random life and day-to-day happenings and stuff is actually going to be a solid sales strategy for you. Now, I don't mean it won't help you make sales. That's, again, not what I'm saying, but it's not a clear place to start because it can't really be measured. It's not necessarily trackable. It's not something you can put into a KPI. Oh, I wrote 5 Facebook posts this week and they were viewed by how many people, because you can't track it. You don't have that data. It's proprietary information. Goodness, that took a while to get out. That's only ever going to be held by the social network itself. And so it can be really, really difficult to watch people who are kind of feeling like, oh my goodness, I have to be posting all this content. I have to post about my life and I have to post about things that potentially are quite traumatic. This is, I feel like, where the rise of the pimp your pain for profit crowd rocked up, because people couldn't find things to post about anymore. It's really hard to just post, today I had Wheatsticks, tomorrow I'm going to have Cheerios, and the day after that I might have Cocoa Pops, living on the edge. That is difficult, and it's not sustainable, and it's also not interesting. And so people had to find more interesting content, or what they thought would be more interesting. And when we look at interesting content, we look at things that stir up an emotion. And that's where a lot of people found that the easiest emotion to stir up was negative, because everyone has had a negative experience, and everyone can overcome a negative experience. So it can feel like it's a hero journey. It can feel like something that would be easy to promote from. And unfortunately, acting like an influencer before you are one, it just takes a lot of time and a lot of heartache, because, and I know this, so I put up a post recently, listen to Jess's experience on social media, but I put up a post recently that I thought was really quite interesting. It's about a research survey that I was doing and some articles that had shown that women, the world didn't cater to women. It was really, really interesting. And I think it was published by the Metro or the Guardian, one of those, but it was really interesting. And I posted about it and I got 2 likes from my friends who are super feminist, and they're like, yeah, we thought this was great. About 3 weeks later, I put up a post saying that I was dancing around the kitchen to the Spice Girls with our new soundbar on, and it sounded amazing, and how hacked off must Sam be, because I'm listening to 90s pop on something that apparently should only be reserved for, Game of Thrones soundtracks. And that got 50 likes. So it can be quite difficult if you are somebody who really is trying to give value in posts on a social network. It can be quite disheartening, because when you do post things that you genuinely think are interesting, or you've got them with a call to action, usually the algorithm is playing against you. If you're putting external links in, then the algorithm's playing against you. Not as many people are going to see it. If you're talking about something that your core group of friends and family, who are most likely to see your content first, feels like it's dry or not relevant to them, then Facebook isn't going to push it out to as many other people. And so you can end up thinking, oh my God, nobody's interested in my content. Oh my goodness, I must be really dull or something. And that's not true. But it's an example of why trying to be an influencer before you are one can actually be not just disheartening for your bank balance, but also mentally incredibly draining. It's an incredibly draining way to market yourself. And it's hugely reliant on what we now know are vanity metrics. I'm not entirely sure that anyone bought anything off of me, because I prefer the Spice Girls to take that, but who knows? So when do you become an influencer? When is it right to become an influencer? And that, I think, depends on what kind of business model you want to run and how your sales strategy wants to work. I mean, one of my friends, Dan Meredith, he is somebody that I would consider to be an influencer. I'm laughing and in my head thinking, as much as it pains me to say it, but it doesn't. Dan's a very nice guy. He's got a very specific personality. He enjoys being on social media all of the time. He loves posting regularly. about what he's up to. And, he's kind of like no holds barred on social media. He'll talk about his family, he talks about his relationships, he talks about what he's learned from different experiences, he talks about his wins, his failures. And he has the numbers to prove that. He has a sizable email list. He's got a free community with about 15,000 people in it. He's got a sizable membership. So actually, yes, he has earned the right to call himself an influencer and, to assume that people will be interested in, whatever he had for breakfast that morning. However, the average person starting out in business who maybe has 100 friends on Facebook is probably not going to have the same results that Dan will have by posting, his 8 eggs and bacon and a call to action that says, come buy my stuff. Because they're only going to have their 100 friends who are kind of like, oh, cool, you had eggs and bacon. I had Wheatos. This is really interesting how many breakfast foods I can name. I don't know whether I'm just hungry or something. But the average person isn't going to have that kind of success. So really start thinking about, if you want to become an influencer or a micro influencer and anything into that category, are you actually ready for it? Are you ready to rely 90% of the time on spray and pray marketing? And social media marketing and organic social posting as your primary forms of lead generation and sales. And if you're not at that stage yet, if you're at the stage where every metric counts, every discovery call matters and tracking it so that you know where it's coming from and when the money's going to come in, if that stuff matters, then you're not ready to be an influencer yet, okay? Now, being an influencer, I just want to put a quick caveat on that. Being an influencer, in social media terms and kind of doing what influencers do, posing with Louis Vuitton bags and doing all that kind of thing, versus influencing people and, challenging their thoughts and beliefs and perspectives are two very different things. And, to be clear, the bit that I'm talking about is the Louis Vuitton bag posing, which I have nothing against either. I quite like a Louis Vuitton bag. I'm just saying, not a solid sales strategy. The next one for me, personal bugbear, is this weird let's all sell low ticket thing. I saw it recently. It was on, I can't remember what platform it's on. I think Facebook. I was scrolling through the newsfeed and all these people were selling like £99 offers. And I'm like, why is this a thing? Like, why is this happening now? Why is everyone selling a £99 offer? And it was so bizarre because, usually with sales, everyone thinks that the magic number to end in is 7. So I was a bit like, ooh, 99, that's new. And then there was just loads of them and people were giving away some really great stuff. They're like, have 6 weeks of transformational life coaching with me for £99. And I'm thinking, Jesus, like, what's your profit margin on that? And they were selling what I would deem, at least mid-range to premium experiences for £99. Now, I joke and I'm sort of like, oh, I wonder what the profit margin is on that. But seriously, what is the profit margin on that? And why are people doing it? Because when you're selling something for £99, yes, it can be easier. It can boost your confidence. I think and I would say this is a mistaken view, but that's okay. There's a mistaken view that actually selling something that's cheaper will get you a better result. They're like, oh yeah, well, if anyone will drop under £100 on something. And that's not true. I don't have a cat. So it doesn't matter how cheap the cat food is. I'm not going to buy it because I don't have a cat. Equally, if you offer me 6 weeks of fitness coaching for £99 and I want to eat donuts all day, I'm not going to buy it. The price has nothing to do with it. The price has everything to do with how much does somebody want to change? How much does somebody really want to hit that goal? And so, this spate of £99 offers just reminded me again that actually it's not about the price. Getting comfortable with selling is not about putting a lower number on something. And that's where we have to move away from and sharpish, because again, if you're focusing on cash flow right now, selling a load of stuff for £99 isn't going to get you any further. It's not going to help you because you're going to have to sell so many of them to make the money that you want that you would have to have a huge audience. And if you had a huge audience in the beginning, surely you would just take the smart route and be like, right, I want to work less and make more. So I'm going to charge a premium price and I'm going to sell, 4 or 5 things at $1,000 each to save me having to sell 10 things at $99 each. That's the way I would expect people to view it. However, and this is the thing, this is not me being judgy McJudgerson. This is just somebody who's been in the sales industry for an awful long time and inherently doesn't want to do tons and tons of work for every single sale. the person you deal with at £99 is going to be just as much work as the person that you deal with at 1,000 or 5,000 or 10,000. So yes, you might have more of them and it might look like, oh my goodness, I just completely filled out a group program. But if you still only made £500 and you now have to deal with, 5-10 people and support all of them, surely it would have just been easier to sell the one at 500, And again, it's not a judgment on pricing or, everybody has to price at a premium level. It's just that if you have a small audience or smaller audience, your business is not going to be sustained on £99 offers. So if you're not feeling confident about selling, look at what it is that you're not feeling confident with. Don't assume that if it's something that's cheaper, it will be easier for me to sell. Actually look at, why don't I want to sell? What is it that makes me feel uncomfortable? Is it the techniques that I'm using? Is it the fear of rejection? Is it the fact that, perhaps I'm selling something that I don't want to sell, or I'm not comfortable selling, or I don't feel like the expert in? You're way more likely to be more successful with selling once you've identified why you don't want to do it and found a way around that, rather than just assuming, oh, it's price, I feel uncomfortable because I hate selling and it must be that's the price, so I'm just going to price really low. And then when a few people buy it, I'll feel better. Because you won't. You'll feel like, oh my goodness, I'm doing all this work for such a low price and now I resent them. And now I feel bad for resenting them. And now I feel bad because I feel bad about resenting them. That's just a cycle that isn't going to be helpful or fun in any way, shape or form. So really start thinking about, if you feel uncomfortable with selling, what specifically is it about selling that you feel uncomfortable with? What part? And then find a resource that's going to help you do that. If it's you hate sales calls and you think, okay, if I sell £99 offers, I won't have to do a sales call. Well, that might be the case, but also you could sell £500 offers or £1,000 offers without sales calls. There are definitely ways of doing that. So definitely look at those resources that are going to help you overcome what the real fear is or the real resistance is, rather than looking for the quick fix. And then finally, my final bugbear of this particular Monday morning is high risk, high expense strategies straight up out of the gate. Now, we kind of touched on this a little bit at the beginning today, but events. And again, this comes under the caveat that unless events are your primary model and you have experience hosting events and running events, or, at some kind of high level, even if it's for a corporate company, you did that. Unless you have that kind of experience and background, it's very difficult to make events profitable, especially straight out of the gate. Okay. Now, I kind of feel like, sometimes, and I've heard these sales pitches where people are like, yeah, if you can get 50 people in a room and they've all paid you even like £30 to be there, then they'll definitely all upgrade to your $10 million mastermind. Maybe, some of them might. It's doubtful. Events are a strategy that can work, but it's a risky strategy because let's face it, with an event, you have all of the initial expense and outlay. You have venue hire, you have refreshments costs, you have insurance liability. And there are lots of things that you have to take into account for hosting a live event and trying to get a ton of people in the same room on the same day and then pitching them at the end, that you actually don't have to worry about if you just start out online. You get a bunch of people in a community, in a Facebook group, your podcast listenership, on an email list, YouTube subscribers, whatever it is. And that's relatively inexpensive. And then you sell to them. You give them valuable content, you have good conversations, and you sell regularly, and you normalize it, and people buy. When you hold an event as your primary sales strategy, when you are a startup and you have no cash flow, you have to then rely on that event not only to pay for itself and break even on the expenses and the outlays that you've put up front, but you also have to have it turn a profit. And that's not easy. So I did an event a couple of years ago at the Ritz. I love the Ritz and I get a really good rate with them and they're amazing. And I did an event a year before that. Both were relatively small, so under 100 people. I think the one at the Ritz was 75 or 80. And the one prior to that was 50. The room hire alone, over £1,500 a day. Yeah. So that's cost one. Refreshments, tea, coffee, shortbread, because everybody wants tea and a biscuit, over £1,000 on its own for tea and coffee and a biscuit. Then travel, hotel stays, hair and makeup, because if I'm going to stand on the stage, then I'm not going to look awful doing it. AV costs, all the other little bits that add up, goodie bags, gift bags, making sure that there is pens, paper available. If you have a flip chart, venues will often charge you more. Don't ask me why. But all of these things, hosting an event, even for less than 100 people, you're looking at an initial outlay of £5,000 before you've even started, before you've even sold anything. So, if you're looking at events, it's yes, absolutely. If you already have a warm audience and you have a really solid, warm audience that are engaged with you, that want to bring their friends along to meet you, that want to come and learn from you live at an event, or you have particular speakers that you feel could draw an audience and introduce a new audience to you, absolutely. Assuming you have the cash flow to do it. If it's your first foray into business, or you're looking at sales strategies and you're still relatively new, you don't have a huge warm audience, or you don't have an existing, even if it's a smaller audience, but like super warm, or you don't have speakers that are going to be a big draw, events are high expense and high risk. And you shouldn't be using them straight out of the gate. Like I say, only caveat to this, unless it is going to be your primary business model and you already have a lot of expertise in that. Now, there are differences, okay? We're talking about events as in half-day or full-day events where people have paid for tickets to come along and get some kind of experience. What we're not talking about is, a networking event in a local pub, or, a kind of meet-up event or anything like that. We're talking about actual events where people have paid sizable money for tickets to come along and have some kind of transformation. It's just not the easiest thing to pull off. And it's a lot of work. It's a lot of stress. Yes, we've talked about the financial outlay and that kind of thing, but it's also a lot of organization. It's quite hard to get a lot of people in the same room at the same time on the same day. And your sales strategy for it, even though you might think, oh, well, an event ticket is going to be less than, other things that I'm selling, people will still have to take into account travel, hotels, all of that kind of stuff. And they will give you that as reasons that they either cannot attend, or that they perhaps thought they were going to buy a ticket, but actually decided not to. And a lot of the time when we assume, oh, we can just put on an event and it's, 10 quid a ticket or something, and then we take into account all of these other costs, that's when it starts to get difficult. And suddenly that ticket for £10 actually goes up to 40, 50, 60, 100. And that's incredibly difficult. And then you start to think, oh my goodness, well, that's crazy. That's going to be a lot of money. And now I'm selling something that was the same price as something else I already had, and for a lot more work. Okay. So just think about that, when you are looking at your sales strategies, when you're thinking, I want to do something new, or you're listening to advice and people are saying, oh yeah, just go out and do this and go out and do that. Really think about what the repercussions are of your business, and think about where you are and what goal you have right now. And like I say, if your goal is cash flow right now, look for the things that are, minimal upfront investment and maximum return. So things that might take you time, but that will get you the maximum return investment in terms of money. If your goal right now is visibility or building your brand, then things like, getting a book or writing a book, recording your own podcast, setting up something like a YouTube subscription show, all of those things, they're slightly higher barrier to entry, but they will do wonders for your brand, for your credibility, all of that kind of thing. But they're not for beginners. Okay, they're really not for beginners. Again, always with the caveat, unless they're your primary business model. Okay, so if you are sat there and you're thinking, okay, Jess, well, now we've talked about all the stuff that I shouldn't do, what should I be thinking about? I will refer you, without further ado, to my podcast episode on the only 3 things you need to do to generate immediate revenue. And also just think about what you are good at, what plays to your strength. It might be that you're really good at sales calls. So in that case, sales calls needs to become your primary source of selling. You might go out there and promote discovery calls all day long, because that's where you convert. It might be that you have great success with challenges or with webinars or things like that. It doesn't matter what it is, but play to your strengths and find something that really works for you. And obviously, if you are struggling, make sure that you are signed up to my email list. If you go onto there and you let us know in the handy welcome sequence, in the handy welcome sequence, you promote that you are looking to hit a certain stage of revenue in your business or focus on a certain area of sales, you'll be sent tailored advice, tips, and tricks to making those things work for you. I hope you have an amazing week. I'm very excited about the guest this week. It's big news, big news. I will see you on Friday for another awesome episode. I hope you have an amazing week and make all of the money. See you soon.